Welcome to In Your 20s podcast. My name is Jodianne. I'm your host for today, and this podcast is all about navigating the ups and downs of your 20s, figuring out yourself for the first time. Welcoming us today is Yazmin Pena, who's going to share a little bit about her journey of her 20s and figuring out herself, being a first generation American, second generation immigrant, and just the journey of discovering herself and what it is to be in two cultures at the same time. So I'm so excited for her to share her story with you all. Welcome, Yazmin.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for connecting with me. Like, your story really compelled me, and I was like, oh, we have to have you on here. So I'm excited. How's your day been so far?
It's been a little bit rough. My car battery died this morning, but that's just, the things of adulting.
Oh gosh, yes, it really is, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
hopefully that gets solved. I'm so sorry to hear that. It hopefully gets solved in time, and maybe this podcast can make your day just a tad bit better.
Oh, totally, for sure.
Okay, awesome. So I always run down with our guests, just hearing a little bit about where they are right now. So if you don't mind me asking, I think you mentioned you're in your 30s, or are you 30?
I am 30, yes.
Okay, so you just said goodbye, close the chapter to your 20s. You're now in your 30s. Well, 30, sorry. She's correct. I'm kidding. She's not. But so I guess take me back to, the start of it, the start of the essence of your 20s. Now, I typically go from like 18 to 22 because I feel like that ranges for a good early 20s.
Yeah.
So yeah, take me back, Yazmin, out of high school, has bright future ahead of her. What was that like?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm originally from New York City. I live in Pittsburgh now, but I did all of my schooling in New York and I went to college in Meadville, Pennsylvania, which was a huge culture shock. And it really did shape a lot of my adulthood, I would say, just like being the first one to graduate college in my family and like navigating that was pretty challenging, but I had a very supportive family, and so everyone was there for me. And my sister had gone to college before me, so she helped me a little bit. But it was really kind of me navigating things on my own for the most part.
Mm.
Like you mentioned before, I'm a second generation immigrant, so my parents are from the Dominican Republic, and they met when they were here. And, that's kind of where my story started. But I guess it all started in college, I guess, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be, and honestly, still figuring it out. College is not it's not the place where you figure out for sure what you're going to do for the rest of your life for most people. I think college is really just a way to figure out what you're good at, what you're interested in, and it definitely did help me in that sense, but just in a very non-traditional way. And so I think I was, I wouldn't say I was lost in my 18 to 22 years, but I was kind of just generally confused. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I got my bachelor's in psychology with a minor in Spanish. And it was kind of just one of those things where like I was interested in psychology. So I just took a bunch of classes and
Mhm.
my minor happened because I couldn't finish my other minor. So I had to do something quickly.
Oh.
Um, my last minor was religious studies, and my professor got sick right before I could take the last class I needed to finish my minor. So
Oh.
I decided to do Spanish because I thought it would be easy.
Mhm.
It was not. But I made Spanish my minor, and I was able to study abroad in Spain to kind of knock out the rest of my minor just in one semester. So that was kind of where that came from. So it wasn't really planned. It was kind of just something that happened, but
Yeah.
it ended up sending me on this really fun journey now. I am now 30 years old and starting my own brand, I guess. So I am the recovering No Sabo Kid. So I don't know if you know what a No Sabo Kid is,
Yeah.
but in case you don't, for those who don't, it's someone with Latin heritage that doesn't speak Spanish. And there's like a lot of different definitions of that. but I speak Spanish now because I'm almost self-taught. My parents came here when they were pretty young, and
Okay.
so they speak English to us, and so that's kind of an interesting thing to be a part of when your
Mhm.
culture is very heavily language based. So I'm very culturally Dominican, but I didn't have the language aspect, which was interesting. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm kind of talking to other people and seeing their experiences with being a No Sabo kid, and all that started without me realizing it back in college. So that
Yeah.
was a lot to say for introduction, but
No,
that's kind of where I'm at now. Yeah.
no, it's an amazing introduction, and it helps pivot into, the direction of where this podcast is going. You started off saying that you grew up in New York, and anyone that goes to New York knows it's a culture hub. I grew up in
Yeah.
Florida, so I know all the New Yorkers are down south at Florida. So uh, I totally can see that culture shift going to Pennsylvania. You said it was,
Yeah.
right? So you know, hearing that, what do you feel like in those moments where you felt alone? I wouldn't say alone, but you saw the difference in culture, right? Or at least just, you said you weren't confused, but it was a shock. How did you navigate that? Going from a different culture, you going to school, not knowing what you're really doing. Take me back to that confusion, and how did you get out of it? Because maybe there's a student that's like, I'm going through that right now, and I don't know how I can get through this. So, what
Yeah.
were some things you did to navigate that?
For sure. So I went to a PWI, predominantly white institution. So that was the biggest culture shock for me,
Mhm.
because I went to a school where it was pretty evenly diverse. There was like the same amount of Black, Hispanic, white, Asian in my school.
Mhm.
And to then be the only person of color on the dorm floor was a very jarring experience. I had to explain myself constantly. People didn't understand why I looked the way I look, why I spoke the way I spoke. And it required a lot of me educating people when they could have simply Googled. And so it was one of those
Yeah.
things it was very exhausting. I'm not gonna lie. It was a lot, and it was a lot of me figuring myself out because I never had to ask these questions. I had never had to answer these questions before. In New York, people look at me and immediately go, "Oh, she's Dominican or Puerto Rican." That's
Yeah.
like the two things, right?
Mhm.
And then I went to school, and then people were kind of just like, "Where is that? Is that in Africa?" Like it was just, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a lot of questions about if I was African, and so it was just kind of like one of those like, do we not know geography? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and so I tried to, and it was also, I was very desperate to fit in. I didn't know how to navigate being the only person that looked like me. So I sadly, and I do regret this, I kind of avoided the organizations that would put me with my own people. I went to like one Latin student union thing and then just felt like I didn't belong there. Also, because of my Spanish issues, I felt like I didn't belong there.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I belonged in the Black student union. And that was like a weird, because I'm obviously Afro-Latina, but I didn't know how to explain that to people at the time. I barely knew the word when I was in college. So it was a lot of me just trying to not make myself stand out any more than possible, even though it was and at the time, like my hair was straight, like I didn't go natural until my senior year. So I just tried to do everything as possible to not make myself like stand out, and really did myself an injustice with that. And as an adult, I'm kind of like, I should have been like at all
Yeah.
these unions. I should have been at these meetings and stuff. I ended up being the vice president of like an Indian club.
Oh,
Just
okay.
I really liked I really
Fit
liked
in.
Indian culture, and yeah, like I love Bollywood, so I was like, let me join this thing because
Yeah.
because no one else in the club was Indian either, so I was kind of just like, sure, let's do
Okay.
this. Um, and yeah, it was just a lot of me trying to figure out who I was and where I belonged. And by the time I graduated, honestly, I still didn't feel like I belonged. I still felt like
Mhm.
I, you know, and it was it. And then after that, I moved to Pittsburgh, which was kind of the same thing, honestly.
Mhm.
I'm still explaining who I am to a lot of people here.
Right.
But once I got here, I was a lot more confident in myself and a lot more. I wouldn't say prouder of my heritage because I've always been proud of my heritage, but I've been more vocal and loud about it. So now I'm on the board for Alpha Pittsburgh, which is the Association of
Oh, awesome.
Professionals.
Yeah.
I do a lot of events with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here. I'm also the co-lead for the Latin Faculty and Staff Alliance at Carnegie Mellon University. So I'm like in the trenches now. I'm like, I'm not the union, you're gonna know about it. And I don't care who's upset about it. And I think that really helped a lot in my journey through like self-discovery of like not hiding myself and doesn't matter if I'm different than other people because different isn't bad. And I think that was like the biggest thing that I learned in my 20s was like different is not necessarily bad, it's just different. And so I made a lot of good friends because I, you know, kind of changed my thinking around that. And now I don't mind educating people as much because now it's just a way for me to share my heritage and you know, be proud of who I am. So it did take a lot of work and it
Mhm.
probably took until like last year maybe for me to feel like fully comfortable with who I am and where I come from. And so it's definitely been a journey and I'm still currently on that journey.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. You know, when you mentioned how in when you were in college and you didn't really want to get involved in organizations that were like related to who you were as a person because you maybe felt that because of the language barrier or you're just trying to fit in. I feel so many relate to that because even when I was in college, there was a lot of, even family members or students I knew that were like, oh, I grew up around that, but I don't feel like I'm truly in the culture, so I can't join. But you
Mhm.
can, that's the whole essence of the organization is to sorry, to get comfortable, to figure out yourself, to learn deeper concepts that maybe your family didn't explore or didn't go on. So I guess now looking back, for a student that was like you, try to fit in, doesn't want to ask all the questions, doesn't want to answer all the questions that people may be asking, and feels tired of fitting in, but feels this call to join, but is like, I'm not sure enough. What would you tell them?
I would tell them join. I guarantee you there's somebody else in there that feels the exact same way. And
Mm,
that's gonna be the person you cling on to and you're like, oh great, someone else that feels the same way.
mm,
And I think the feeling of not being enough comes from everything. It can be culturally, it can be linguistically, it can be like you look different. And we're always gonna feel like we don't fit in somewhere, and that's just a part of life. So I think you really have to push past that and tell yourself that you belong anywhere you want to be, right? So if you want to be in this club, then you should just be in that club. And I think what for me, I think my struggle was that like for our organization, the Latin Student Union, it was very like most of the members were like Mexican or Central American, and like there were no other Dominicans, right? And
mm.
those cultures are very, very different. And because of my school, they just said like, oh, you speak the same language, just I'll do it
Yeah.
all together. And there was nothing wrong with that. But there was just something in me that was like, I don't know anything about Mexicans. I don't know anything about the culture. I don't like, I'm not gonna, but how fun would that have been to join and learn about it? Like how cool would that have been to learn their customs and slang words that they use? And like now there's a ton of Mexicans in Pittsburgh and Central Americans and Venezuelans and stuff like that. And like I'm learning about all that now. And I'm like, I should have put myself out there. Like it didn't matter that they were different from me because I also could have taught them about Dominicans. I could have given them insight on our culture. And I feel like that was a missed opportunity for me. So I feel like even if it feels weird, and I promise you it's going to feel weird, like it's just go and go multiple times. Because sometimes the first time isn't always the best, but make a habit of trying to go to these things and putting yourself out there so that you give yourself the chance to have a new experience.
Mm, wow. And you said putting yourself out there. Do you feel like that speaks to the essence of your 20s and even your early 20s?
Oh, absolutely. There's so much imposter syndrome that I still deal with a ton of imposter syndrome. And if I feel like that starts in your like mid-20s. I feel like when you're like 18, 19, 20, you kind of think you're invincible. So like a little bit, you're kind of just like, oh, nothing happens to me. I can do what I want. And then it doesn't start until you're like approaching maybe your first career, your first job, your first thing where you have to prove yourself, and then you're telling yourself like, oh God, I can't do this. Like,
Right.
is this for me? And and like I said, like if you want to be there, it's for you, right? And so like if you were given the opportunity, then it's for you. So I think the biggest thing for me at that time was really like, and currently in dealing with imposter syndrome, I have to keep telling myself that like if the opportunity presented itself, it's because I'm ready for it. Even if I don't feel ready for it, that's how the universe works, right? And I'm just gonna listen to the universe.
Mhm.
So I do think like the mid-20s is kind of where you're the most lost. And I feel like people think that they're supposed to have it together during that time period. And
Yes.
I don't know what myth, I don't know who started that.
Really?
But
Okay.
that is not the truth. It is not. And people lie to you, right? And so
Okay.
I remember being on social media and seeing I was purposely like curating my feed and things. And so I was seeing things from older people. And I think it really helped me that they were so honest about how their 30s were actually the time that came with more clarity. I think with your 20s, you're kind of insecure, you feel like, I don't know, you don't feel comfortable in your own skin and you're kind of just trying to figure it out. And I think because of that, I was so looking forward to my 30th birthday. I was like excited. And I know so many women that were like, no, I'm 29 forever. Like I'm not gonna be 30. And I'm like, I am 30 and proud. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I love being 30. I feel like I hit my 30th birthday and suddenly like clarity happened. I don't know, like something clicked in me where I was kind of just like, oh, this is who I am. This is what I love about myself, and this is what I want to put out into the world. And I think I just gained this sense of confidence and almost like resilience as well, and also this kind of sense of I'm very now defensive of myself in a way that I wasn't before. Like before, people could say something mean about me, and then be like, "Oh no, my day is ruined," right? Now I'm like, "Shh, you can say what you want. I know who I am. This
Right.
is me," you know. And I
Yeah.
think that comes with a lot of honestly, that comes with a lot of like rejection, and like the bad things that happen to you are really just character blocks,
Mhm.
right? They're just building stepping stones into who you become. And so I'm so grateful for those like closed doors and those like, missed opportunities and things, because they all taught me a lesson. And now whenever I experience rejection, I'm not gonna lie and say like I'm cool with rejection, like who's cool
Right.
with rejection, right? But now it doesn't make me feel like I'm a bad person because I'm rejected. It just wasn't an opportunity for me, and I'll be ready for the next one. And so I think there's just a lot more self-assurance when
Mhm.
you leave your 20s, and I think that's my favorite part of being 30. I just feel like I just feel like now I feel as when I'm invincible. Like the
Yeah.
18 invincible was fake. Now I'm kind of just like, come at me world. I'm good to go.
Oh, I love it. And I can even see it through your energy, the way you look. Like you just give that aura of like, yeah,
Thank you.
I'm 30. Don't take it or leave it, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of times when I've seen people when they reach their late 20s, they're like, I didn't get the milestones. I didn't hit the milestones. What am I doing? Everyone's questioning me and I don't know. I don't know. And for some odd reason, 30 is considered old to some younger, let's say 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
18 to like maybe 20 to 30 is considered old. So it's just like now you have this idea of what age is, and I think sometimes they get stuck in that perspective of I didn't do what I was supposed to do in my 20s. Earlier you were saying who said the milestone of 25. I feel like everyone's been saying that.
And what is that?
I don't know. Can we please switch it this generation?
Yeah.
Please. No, but it's so true. Like we should really look at, I say this a lot in the podcast, is that your 20s is like your new age. So
Yeah.
20 is 0, 21 is 1. So
Yes.
okay, you get me.
Yes,
You
exactly.
get me. So think of it in the same essence of growing up. You didn't really feel like a kid until you were maybe like 5 or 6, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, I started kindergarten. Like I'm around other kids. You're really like getting
Yeah.
the gist of what it is. So by 30 or 10, and you're like a fifth grader, so you feel like you're on top of the school. So it's
Mhm.
like all those things where take that same concept into adulthood.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's you're making me want to get run to 30, but I'm in my 20s and I'm going through the figuring out life
Mhm.
section. So when you said being lost, it's so true. You question everything. You're it's like insecurity, but it's not insecurity like, oh, I want to hide myself. It's insecurity like I don't have a grasp. I thought I had a grasp, but now the grasp is left, like lost. I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm doing when I thought I knew what I was doing. I think it's coming into the reality that you're not invincible.
Yeah. Yeah.
The humbling experience. So, how would you speak to rejection? I know you said that's something that you now embrace. For someone who wants to get to that now, like in their mid 20s or early 20s and get it over with, what ways would you say you can face rejection and get comfortable with it? Or at least what strategies can you wire your brain to, hey, this is not personal, this is just a life lesson?
Yeah, for sure. I can think of two instances that speak to that. The first one was I was up for a posse scholarship in high school, and it was a full ride to college, but it was like only certain colleges accepted the scholarship. And I got through all the rounds, and the last round I didn't get it. And I felt like my life was over. I was so upset. And meanwhile, I had been um, visiting these colleges just to see if I would even like any of these colleges that were accepted in Posse, and I hated all of them. But I wanted to get the scholarship because it was a scholarship, and
Right.
also because like the prestige that came with like being a Posse scholar. And my best friend from high school got it, and I'm so happy for her. She went to Wisconsin, and that was an interesting experience for her. Um,
Yeah.
but I I think about that, and I was like, if I would have gotten that scholarship, I would have been miserable because the schools that I went to were not a good fit for me personally.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, fine, right? And so I got to college, and I signed up for Teach for America. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this would be so great. I'll get to like go to new places, travel and be my own and whatever. And I didn't get it. And I remember all the work I put into doing that interview and that presentation. And I was just like, what is it about me that people don't like? Right. And so then it was personal. Right. And I was like,
Right.
okay, I'm terrible. I'm never going to be a teacher. That's what I wanted to do at the time. And I just told myself that this wasn't the life for me. And I was just, very upset about it. And then I realized that I also would have been miserable. You know what I mean? Like it was because of my rejection from Teach for America that I ended up moving to Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh has its flaws, yes, but I love my life here. Like I met my husband here. I have all these great friends here. I work at a great university. Like I have everything that I wanted that I thought I would get with these other opportunities, I got without them. And possibly in a better way. I was much more stable,
Mhm.
like financially and like emotionally also, because I had a core group of people. So it was one of those things that like I look back on and I was like, oh my God, thank God I didn't get that Teach for America job because I would have ended up in like Idaho or something and like this completely random place. And I would have been absolutely isolated. Like I didn't have anybody that I was gonna know at the time. So it's one of those things where like I think about it and I was like, maybe that could have been a cool experience for me. But I love my life now. And so whenever I get rejection now, I think about okay, I wanted this thing and I didn't get it, but look how good my life is now. And I think kind of telling myself back and forth that like a rejection is not the end of the world. It is just an opportunity to find something new. Maybe
Mm.
I remember like when I was applying for jobs and not getting jobs, and when I got laid off during COVID, like there's been so many times where I've had to pick myself off the floor after wanting something and not getting it. And I still have to deal with that because life doesn't always go as you plan, right? There's always going to be times where you want something and you can't get it or you can't do it. And it's one of those things that you have to learn how to pivot. Like if you allow yourself to drown in the misery of not getting something, you're never going to get up and do something else. And I think one of those, like, and even now, like, I'm still learning about what I want to do career-wise. I'm still like, I'm just starting with my brand stuff and getting speaking engagements and things like that. And it's really hard because there's a lot of rejection. But I also think about all the rejection is teaching me a lesson. Like, why did I not get this one gig? Maybe my bio wasn't strong enough. Let me work on that. And I remember when I was applying for jobs, I had always wanted to work at university. I love colleges and universities and students and things like that. And I kept getting rejected. It was so frustrating. I was like, Pittsburgh is a college city, and I could not get into a university here, and it was driving me insane. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting rejected for some reason. Let me figure it out. So I figured it out, redid my resume, got a call in a week. So it was one of those things that a rejection is not always telling you that you don't deserve this. It's telling you that you have to fix something. And that's part of growing, that's part of adulting, that's part of just being an adult and, moving on. And I think that's a lot of people don't take the lesson from their rejection, and that's where they kind of fail there because they stop because they were rejected when the rejection should have been the motor that propels you elsewhere. So that's kind of my my spiel on rejection. I still struggle with it, but I'm trying to reframe it now.
That was good. That was good because it's true. A lot of people stop. They say, you know what, I'm over it. Like the emotions that come with rejection and also not knowing how to manage those sad emotions, they can overtake and blur the vision and the goal. So
Yeah.
you're so true. I mean, you're so right about just understanding because you did mention that your life is good, but sometimes, which is great, but like there's people whose life aren't good. So that rejection was just that extra like,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But just as you mentioned again, it's now I have room for another opportunity. Now I have room for another chance of something better,
Yeah.
or maybe something that's more aligned to me. Because when you were denied of the scholarship, maybe you weren't able to get that experience from Pennsylvania, which compelled you to really dig deeper into your culture, which then led you to now start, so it's now, and then now looking back, you can attest to those students who were trying to fit in, who were trying to mask who they are. So it's everything kind of aligns.
Yeah.
Maybe in the moment you don't see it, but in the end, it comes in, full true form. So I guess the concept really is failing forward.
Yeah. Failing forward. I like that. Yeah.
Forward, yeah, awesome. So, Yazmin, you've shared a great story. You started off figuring out yourself, moving to a different place, going to college, figuring out your degree and then working. And now you start your business and you're really advocating for people who were like your younger self. So you're really being a bigger sister or the person you've always wanted to be. So that's so great to hear. But let's just go back and be that bigger person of your 20s. And what advice would you give each version of your 20s? So your early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s. If you were to go time travel, what is some advice you would give each version?
Oh, for all those versions, first one would be let that man go.
Okay.
I always recommend, and this is gonna be controversial, but this is my personal opinion. When you're in high school and you're leaving to college, let that person go. I just I'm one of those people that I think you need to go into college with a fresh start, and that also includes toxic friends. Not all friends. Like I'm still friends with some friends that I had in high school, and I'm friends with people I was in college with, but I saw a lot of the mistakes that my friends made were holding on to relationships that didn't serve them when they were in them in high school, and they brought them into college. And it really hindered their experience. Like for me, for instance, like I spent more time worrying about boys than on what I was trying to do with my life. And that didn't hit me until I graduated, and so there's obviously, if you have something good, then don't listen to me. But I'm saying, like, if it wasn't serving you at the time, then I guess like have have the knowledge that you deserve better and you deserve more, and that you'll get that at your next stage in life. I think a lot of people really like to hold on to their high school career. Like I saw a lot of, I didn't have this in New York because we weren't like football people. We had no place to practice. But
Yeah.
it was like a lot of the people I met in college that were like football stars in high school, they
Mm.
could not let that go. And it was like their entire personality. And I think even when they graduated, they just kept talking about how they were this big star in high school. And I'm just like, what have you done since? Like, please kind of evolve past that. And I think a lot of people are stuck in where they were in high school, even if it's not a positive thing. Like I remember, not everyone's high school experience is a good one. Mine wasn't the best. And that stuck with me for far too long. And I think part of the reason why I felt like I didn't fit in college was because I was still stuck on the things people said about me in high school.
Mm.
And that didn't serve me any justice, right? And so I think letting go of that part of your life. I think like it doesn't mean that you have to cut everybody off and start fresh and not speak to anybody anymore, but more so like acknowledge what it is that was holding you back in high school and then let it go. I think also another thing was, on top of the rejection, like look into being by yourself. I think like not to say like in a relationship or not in a relationship, that kind of thing, but I mean like physically just like being alone. I have discovered a lot about myself from living by myself. I always recommend, especially women, to live by themselves for whatever period of time you can manage it, because I discovered so many things when I lived by myself. I discovered that I love yoga, and I love yoga in the morning and having a cup of tea at night and spending all day reading and like doing things that nourish me and that make me happy without depending on anybody else. And so now I can be left alone for a week in my apartment and not have any issues, when I know so many people that can't have a meal by themselves. And it's a disservice to yourself, because like if anything, for me, I am my biggest fan, right? And everyone should be their biggest fan. And you only get to that space once you spend time with yourself. And spending time with yourself is scary. I'm not gonna lie, because then you have no distractions. Your thoughts are going wherever they're going, and you have to come to terms with yourself without any help. But I think that is a huge, huge part of your growth, of just finding out who you are, what you enjoy. And
Mm.
a lot of people put on a mask for other people and don't realize that they're doing it until they're older and have figured it out. And I realized that I was like taking the interests of the people that I was with or around and kind of making it my personality. And I'm like, I don't even like cars. Why do I like, why am I pretending to like cars?
Yeah.
And so I think that took away so much from me, because like now I know my interests, and now I'm so passionate about them. I'm so excited about my interests, and like I'll talk people's ear off about my house plants, and they're like, okay, whatever, but like I love it and it makes me happy. And
Mm.
so I think really just spending time with yourself, take yourself out on dates. I used to book myself a restaurant. I would dress up fancy, go alone by myself. I booked a solo trip to DC. I was out here alone. I had a blast. Like that was my favorite. One of my favorite trips was when I went to DC by myself. Like I encourage solo travel. I'm a big travel person in general. So like I recommend that. I recommend those getaway cabins by yourself. Get one of those like hour away from you. You spend the weekend by yourself. I love those. Yeah, just that's my biggest thing, is just spend time with yourself.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. And yeah, you said some good things. You said a lot in terms of solo. That's so real, because you come in this world with yourself and you die with yourself. And
Yeah.
it's so true about letting go of identities, because I think for so long we worked our way up to get to like being a gymnastics or being in sports or being a valedictorian or being a debate leader. And when it's stripped away and the people around you don't really idolize it, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so who am I? So that's so real. And Yazmin, your story is amazing. I hope this relates to somebody. How can we reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is recoveringnosabokid.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm under Yazmin Infante Pena. I do have two last names, so that's always trips people up. Um, and where else can you find me? I guess on I don't have a social media page yet for my Recovering No Sabo Kid, but that is in the works. So definitely my newsletter that you can find on my website, and I do some blogging and I will start doing some video content and stuff like that. But for the most part, there and LinkedIn is how you can reach me.
Awesome. Well, Yasmin, thank you for your time. We really appreciate your insight. Feel free to connect with her, you all. And that concludes today's episode of In Your 20s. Okay, thank you guys for listening. Bye.